Hallo, assalamu alaikum, good morning, khushamdeed, ji ayanu, goeiemorgen.
Bekhair agale, ni hao, chune shumme, washwale, ohio gozaimas, guten morgen, hola. Boyor privyet, kaifahal, hale shumat chatore, ahlan wasalan marhaba, buna, mucho, gracias, suaviab, and a very amazing good morning to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and are watching World this morning alongside the very fantastic, the very fabulous, the very super good looking Shiza Hashmi and Shahzad Khan. Hello Shiza, how are you today?
I'm absolutely great. Thank you so much for making my day. Well,
No
same
problem.
goes to you as well.
Oh, no, but you definitely look very amazing today.
Thank you so
And
much. So do
yeah,
you.
a lot of hard work goes into it, but it's it's all right.
Have to wake up 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
No, but other than that, Shazad, how are you feeling? You were off for quite some days.
Yeah, I was off for, well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that I would actually love to give a message to people out there. And this is something which I've learned in my life the hard way. That I've seen people who actually want to work, and then I've seen people who will actually talk to you so that they can get some work. But ladies and gentlemen, I think that the very the capacity to understand that one thing is an opportunity for you, and then changing that opportunity to your advantage is something else. And it definitely requires a little bit of experience and talent too. But for all those people who are out there, I think that one thing you should always do is, you should always ask for work from Allah Almighty,
Of
because Allah is
course.
the one who's actually going to provide you with all the things. But Shiza, since for the past month or so, I have not even got a single day to myself. So what happened was that I was working too much,
Yeah.
and I kind of got into flu and sore
Oh
throat and
no.
whatnot. And the weather was changing, I was traveling. So ladies and gentlemen, one more important message, and that is that if you've got flu, please make sure that you don't shake hands or give hugs to anybody else. Because it's
Exactly.
contagious and somebody else can get it, and this is how I got it as well. And I don't know about the person who actually
Gave
shook
it to
hands
you?
with me or hugged me, but then at the same time, it is your responsibility to be careful. And I don't think that it is rude or harsh to tell somebody if he or she is sick that please, it's better that we don't shake hands. There's no problem, but look after yourselves. The weather's changing. Quite a lot of hot and cold air temperatures can bother you a lot. So please, just be safe.
Right, absolutely. But Shazad, remember last year we sort of promised each other that we were going to get flu shots this time,
Yeah.
just to be safe, because I think it's a common thing. Also with me, it happens very often. Almost every other week I'm sick when it's winter. So for everyone out there, this is an option. Of course, I'm not your doctor.
Yeah.
Please consult your doctor before this. Other than that, Shazad, this morning I actually experienced something very different and amazing.
What's that?
So I used a car service. I'm going to name it, okay, it was Kareem. So the driver was a female, and she was, of course, very much fun to talk to. She was educated and whatnot, belonged to a less fortunate segment of the society. But what I absolutely admired was, first of all, her courage to do this non-conventional job. I mean, it's really non-conventional for a woman if you look at it, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that she was earning, I mean, a lot of people out there, I mean, you see on the roads and on the streets as well, resort to begging or like literally asking people to help them out without doing something on their own. I absolutely love the idea that she was, standing up for herself and was there earning for herself. No matter what segment of the society you belong to, dignity is the thing to live by. And that is what I saw in her in this morning. And she absolutely inspired me.
Exactly. Thank you very much for saying that, because the similar things happened to me. So in Lahore, I've seen a woman.
Everything I say happens to you.
Yeah, so I've seen a woman riding a rickshaw in Lahore.
Okay.
I've seen ladies riding trucks and buses in
I love
Karachi
it.
as well. And I think that it is very important, for somebody to say, oh, it's not safe for women to ride motorcycles, but
Come
hey,
on.
you weren't around when that lady actually needed sugar or anything else in her
True,
place.
true.
So she had to go out. And ladies and gentlemen, I think that it's about time that we understand that each and every gender will have to contribute towards the economic status of the country. And I think that everybody
Absolutely.
should be given a talent or a skill set with which they can help. And there's a reason why we're talking about it, ladies and gentlemen. Today happens to be 17th of October 2019, and today is Poverty Eradication Day. And if we go back in time, it was in the early 19th century that that the day started to observe. But imagine, hey, poverty still exists. So I think that other than just celebrating and observing all of these days,
Right.
we really need to talk about the potential which lies within the society and how they can contribute towards the economic status, towards the mental health status, towards the growth status.
Absolutely.
So poverty, ladies and gentlemen, explained is that poverty is multidimensional. It just
Right.
do not have to be related with economy. It has to do with quite a lot of other things.
Right. Thank you so much for saying that, Shazad, because we today definitely are going to look up on multidimensional multidimensional poverty. Of course, poverty has a lot to do with the income as well, but this is not just, that's not it. I mean, income is not all of poverty. When we say multidimensional, we're also looking at, basic facilities that, the lack of which can actually frustrate you or push you to limits where your life can even worsen. So if you have all those basic facilities to live by, to live your life with dignity, with respect, that is when you are not poor anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme for this year is acting together to empower children, their families and communities in eradicating poverty.
Exactly, that's great. Thank you very much for saying that. And ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, we're actually going to unveil our guest right in front of you, because I think that these people are going to do an amazing job today in making us, understand what poverty basically is, what are the characteristics of poverty, and how we can actually eradicate poverty without damaging this society. And I think that this is something which we really need to work on. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud, I'm very thankful to Allah Almighty that all of these people have taken out time to be on our show. Ladies and gentlemen, with us we today have Chief Executive Officer, Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund. He's none other Mr. Qazi Asmat Isa. Hi sir, Assalamu alaikum, how are you?
Walaikum assalam, it's great to be here.
What a good looking gentleman
energy.
you are. Wow, it's good to see some amazing smiles early in the morning, and it's wonderful. Alongside Qazi Asmat Isa Saab, ladies and gentlemen, this lady I would like to take a minute to introduce to you guys, because of the fact that I think that she's done wonders in her lifetime. So whatever she's done so far, I do not even have words to explain how good it is. But so imagine that she has been nominated for Nobel Peace Prize back in 2005. She's actually been awarded with the highest civil award, which is Sitara Imtiaz. And ladies and gentlemen, moving on, she's none other than the National Commission on the Status of Women. She's the chairperson. She's none other than Ms. Khabar Mumtaz. Hello, ma'am. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum salam. What an introduction.
Thank you very much for joining us. It was wonderful to have you. And, while I was reading the bio, I myself thought that, oh, she's on our show, we should feel great too as well. So it's good to have you over here. Thank you very much. Last but not the least, ladies and gentlemen, we've actually been joined by somebody who's into analyzing that all of those investments which the country is making, and then negotiating with the government that this is how it needs to be done. He's the person behind it, and I think that I've got a lot of hard questions for you too, sir. But it's all right. He's the country director for International Fund for Agricultural Development. He's none other than Mr. Hubert Bourard. Hi, how are you? Good to have you over here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much. So to get the conversation started, I think, Isa Saab, I'm going to get the conversation started with you.
Let's do it.
Let us understand poverty and how poverty is multidimensional. And let me be honest. So before 2019 and before this show, I never knew that poverty can be multidimensional. I'll be honest over here. So it's a learning phase for me, and let's learn. Go ahead,
And also
please.
the status of poverty in Pakistan.
Okay. So we can actually have a whole day show and we will still not come to it. But let me sort of try, like in Urdu they say, Pure samandar ko koose mein band karna. So I will try to do that.
Okay.
Now poverty was, a little bit of history, was always seen as related to income and the economic side of it. And in the year 2000, the United Nations came up with the Millennium Development Goals that they say that, we will measure progress of nations according to these 8 goals, okay? Which were primarily focused, a lot of them were focused on reducing income poverty. In fact, the first Millennium Development Goal was about halving extreme poverty, people living in extreme poverty. Since then, I think the definition and the understanding of poverty has moved on to be a much more holistic understanding of it, which means lack of opportunity, lack of services, living sustainably with the environment. So now, in 2015, when the review was of the Millennium Development Goals, there was another set of goals that came into being, which were called the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, which are far more comprehensive, and there are 17 of them, and there are 169. And it's far more profound. And if I was to capture all of this in one sentence, and which they say is leave no one behind. So I think this is that everyone in a society feels that they are acknowledged, like you mentioned, dignity. They have dignity, they have access to opportunity. And it's not only about humans. We are stewards of the earth. We are also responsible, and that is also captured in the SDGs. Life underwater, life above water. How are we engaging with the outside world? Climate change, that is also a part of the SDG. And now people have added things like, happiness, that how happy is a nation. And this was started in Bhutan, the small kingdom of Bhutan, the visionary leader said that I'm not going to measure my people's progress based on economics. I'm going to measure my people's progress based on how happy they are.
Yeah.
So development is not about, transforming economies. It's about transforming lives. It's about transforming social structures. People
Right,
who don't have a
absolutely.
voice can now actually, have a voice and be empowered. So I can go on, but I'll stop
Yes, sir.
here.
No, but I hope, you very beautifully explained sort of what development is, right? Just
right.
not focusing upon economy. And I really hope our neighbor picks up on that as well. I mean, they're literally just focusing upon becoming a superpower in economy, but really not focusing upon improving the
Livelihood,
quality of life of the people living over there.
Exactly. But very quickly, I wanted to ask you something, sir.
Sure.
And it is for the sake of my learning and for the people who are out there in 45 different countries.
Okay.
Now, you said that, poverty is not just economics, it's not just economy, it's multifaceted. But let me ask you this question. If somebody who's got $1 million to himself, are we going to call him poor?
No, so because, depending, because, when we do our work, we have certainly two dimensions. One is this kind of the services, the education, the health, access to finance, all of that, livelihoods. This is that side of it. But then there is the poverty of the mind. The poverty of the mind is when you don't give people their rights, women are, treated badly, people of, transgender have no access. So this poverty of the mind can afflict everyone. And in fact, it afflicts probably the people at the top more than it afflicts people. Because people, when you go down to the villages, they're living together. You go to Thar, Hindus, Muslim, living together, sharing each other's, gham, khushi, sab saath mein hote hain.
Right.
So I think that affliction, I would consider, yes, people can be very poor if they are not giving women their rights or they are not
Absolutely.
यानी आप ये कह रहे हैं कि
recognizing.
लोग सोच से भी गरीब होते हैं.
हाँ, बिल्कुल. Poverty of the mind
Exactly.
and means. So I think we need to address both of them.
Thank you very much.
Right.
But very quickly, let me move on to ma'am over here. So ma'am, they say the status is, it's not me. I'm quoting Wikipedia, ladies and gentlemen, and it was an
Weak
article.
source.
And it was an article from 2016, so I don't know what were the numbers in 2019, or probably the research is not being done.
Yeah.
So the numbers say that there's 9% poverty within the urban areas and 56% poverty in rural areas. But specifically, when we talk about rural areas, I've seen it myself that the women who actually work alongside their men, all of their income is unaccounted for in the first place. And since you are working for the status of women as well, so how are things within the rural areas? And how do you think that we are going to improve the situation?
Right.
You're very right. There's higher poverty in rural areas, and women are the backbone of our agriculture.
Yeah.
Now, if women were, I sometimes advise them, don't go on a strike for 2 days. Then we'll see what happens to the economy.
That is absolutely true.
60% of the women who work in rural areas don't get paid directly.
Yes.
And not only not get paid, they don't get acknowledged for the work they do and the backbreaking work that they do. Some of the most tough, menial work is done by women.
Yep.
Right.
And so from the Commission's point of view, this has been one of our big advocacy area to give recognition to women who work in this non-formal sector where they're not recognized, not acknowledged. Their contribution is also not acknowledged. They work in the fields, they work cotton picking, they look after the livestock, they manage the livestock. There's a whole range of agricultural processes in which women are involved.
Right.
Without any recognition, without any. But the other important thing is that poverty pushes them to sometimes work which is extremely hazardous, like cotton picking. It's poverty that pushes them. That is the only source of their direct income also. But they are exposed to heat. They're exposed to chemicals that go on the cotton crop. They always, by the end of that season, have itches. Their fingers are lacerated. So they all go through a very difficult time.
Right.
And what happens is that the health suffers.
Of
And we're
course.
talking about multidimensional poverty. These are the various dimensions: health dimension,
Living conditions, unsafe housing, so many things.
their housing, but very important is health, not only of their own health, but their children.
Yeah.
They take their babies to the fields and have them there. There's nobody to look after them at home. So the income that recent study in Sindh and South Punjab has shown that income that comes in because of that, a lot of it has to be spent on health.
Absolutely
So,
right.
you're not actually alleviating their poverty, you're making them worse off because other dimensions. Because life is not only about income, but it is also about your relationships, your housing, your health, your education, your children's health. And we have one of the very, very bad malnutrition problem in Pakistan and stunting. And children are the ones who are really affected, and it is generational. It can become generational.
Exactly.
Third largest population of stunted children in the world.
That's right. So we really, when we're talking about poverty, we have to look about our future. 62% or over 60% of our people are young.
Yeah.
And half of them are women.
Yes.
Right,
So
imagine
what are we talking about? I think we really need to focus on recognizing women's work, and I will add here before you, I'm sure you're getting impatient to go to the next person.
We love listening to you. Please go on.
It wasn't me.
Please go on.
Yeah. So in Sindh, government has actually passed a law where they recognize female workforce as labor and gives them the right to register with the right to minimum wage. Now the issue, of course, is how the law gets implemented. But they are now recognized as a big step forward. And Punjab is considering it. And I think that would be the day when we start recognizing our women folk for what they do and what they contribute.
Exactly.
Right. So I'm going to continue with where you left. You know, you're talking about Sindh and the minimum wage over there. So I think, so this actually falls under your area of expertise. I was reading an article, this was about last year, 2018, where they were looking at some Sindhi women who work at, you know, being farmers or in the fields. We know Pakistan happens to be an agrarian society, and a huge number of people living in the rural areas actually depend on farming for, I mean, their income, for their life, for sustainability. So minimum wage set last year that I read was 700 rupees, but they're receiving 350 rupees per day, or even not that, or zero at all. First of all, how can we sort of fix that? First of all, how can we fix the minimum wage set? I'm not even okay with 700, to be honest, Shazal. But let's say, okay, if it is the one, how can we implement that? Ma'am, you very rightly said, even if policies are there, implementation is the problem, right? How can we go about it?
Mr. Hubert?
It's not an easy question.
No problem. You can take your time if you need.
No, what can I say is I have the opportunity to go quite often in the rural area because we have different programs in Balochistan, in Gilgit-Baltistan, in Punjab, and at national level. And I've been able to exchange with farmers, young people in particular, and to try to understand why they migrate, why they are going to the city, why they are going outside of Pakistan, what are their current needs, you know. And I was quite surprised because in reality, it's a lack of opportunity of income generation. And when I ask, you know, how much you need to stay home and to be with a family, the amount is around 100 to 150 US dollar, which is not a big amount, you know, but because of this amount, they move out. And to find opportunity, economic opportunity, you know, in farm or off farm, you know, to generate 100 or 200 US dollar net per month,
Right.
it is very possible. And it's what we are doing. So I don't know if it's exactly, you know, the amount that people are looking for. But in our program, we try to have this type of objective, which is far above, you know, the poverty line, because we are talking about 1.9 US dollar per day. Here, you know, $100, it's more or less $3 per day. Okay. But they are at home, they are with their own family, they don't have to pay for housing, they don't have to pay for, you know, transportation. And finally, as well, you know, these young people, they love their wife, they love their children, and they are very unhappy, I would say, you know, to be outside for 6 months, 8 months, and coming back only for the agriculture campaign. So in our program, we focus on, so we say it's a multi-dimensional, but on the income generation activity for women and men, we set some objectives, and we try to develop and to empower them, you know, with starting up capital or capacity building and facility to access to finance to develop their own business, you know, or to have vocational training program based on the labor market study for them, you know, to be able to have this type of employment.
Well, that's great, and we would definitely want to, you know, ask about the objectives of IFAD. But before we do that, so you have a portfolio of approximately $1 billion over here within Pakistan, if I'm correct. Is that correct?
It is because I'm in charge of different programs. For Pakistan, $600 million.
$600 million.
Yeah,
Okay, so now what I want to ask is that for all of that $600 million which has been invested, so that there is development within the agriculture sector, do you see some development? Because I do not see, you know, our people moving towards technological advancements or incorporating them within their normal day practices where they go out, you know, they have to cultivate, harvest and whatnot. Why do you think that we are still lacking behind within all of those technological advancement? For example, if there's a machine which can help us do 12 hours work in 3 hours, I think that'll be a great idea. But we do not see that kind of progress amongst people or farmers or people who are into agriculture. Why?
Agriculture is not an easy business.
Yeah.
IFAD mandate is to work with the poorest. So in the rural area in Pakistan, you have two types of target group. We are working under the poverty scorecard, which is quite unique in the world, I think, and it's helped us a lot to target people. So I would say we have two types of beneficiary in bracket. One is the family without land.
All right.
So for that, you know, it is difficult to integrate the technology. So for these people, we have a specific activity of farm activities, and those who have land. But those who have land, they are very small lands, no land titled in general. So, you know, they cannot back it up with a bank to have loans, etc. And organization of farmer as well is not easy because maybe some improvement need to be done on the legislative aspect.
Right.
So all of that means that the volume of activity remains very small, and constantly, you know, the technology and the cost of this technology is not
Okay, thank you very much for making us understand that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have to go for a short break, but very quickly, in fact, we have a report to play. But very quickly, Issa Saab, what I wanted to ask was that you've been the CEO for the Poverty Alleviation Fund.
Right.
And since the time that you've taken over and you're in the chair, how much do you think, what kind of population, what percentage of population you've alleviated from poverty?
Oh, wow.
Okay, so I think what is important to understand is how do you measure that? And I'm just going to tell you how we do it and then, you know, leave.
There must be certain indicators, right?
Precisely. So what you say is that when you start in an area, you need to understand what the situation is. So we do a baseline. So we say, okay, this is the level of poverty, right? Access to services, access to income, access to finance, that is it. Okay. Then you start your intervention.
Okay.
And after the intervention, you then look at what has happened in the next 2 years and the next 4 years. Yeah. And you ask an independent, credible third party to do it. You don't do it yourself, otherwise people, even if you do it with the...
They'll have a doubtful...
They'll just say, Haji, you're saying your work is good.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Right. So in this case, for instance, and I would be, you know, happy to inform you that the person that did this for us has just won the Nobel Prize for Economics.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, Esther Duflo and Abir Banerjee, they did this study where we said that we are going to graduate people out of poverty.
Right.
And they looked at this over 7 years. And then they came up with the conclusion that this graduation approach that PPF has you know, pioneered in Pakistan, and I'm happy to report that now government, as part of its overall EHSAS program, has also incorporated, because it is showing credible results. And like I said, through a very rigorous process, what they call random control trials, to show that. So what I can say is when I put my hand on my heart and say, wherever we work, there is improvements happening. But poverty is not, I mean, there is no silver bullet.
Okay.
You have to do the basics. And some basics we can do, some basics we cannot do. Policy we can't do. Land reforms, which are essential. You talked about agriculture. They are essential for poverty alleviation.
Right.
We haven't had. We have some of the most skewed land ownerships in the world. They have this measure called Gini coefficient. And when you look at China, the first, when we say, okay, we want to copy the China model, and you know, how did they reduce poverty for 1 billion people? They took 1 billion people out of poverty.
Right.
The first thing is you look at the land holdings.
All right.
Okay, So it's very equal. The poorest of the poor have at least, close to, I think it's 0.6 hectares. Now
Alright.
here you see it's further division of division, and so that's one thing. The second thing, which ma'am also talked about, is the access to services. They made sure that everyone had basic services like education, health, and they had safety nets.
Exactly.
So people who are old, they had a pension. People who are young made sure that they had access to nutrition.
Exactly.
So those are some of the fundamentals that are essential
Right.
for this. And in terms of so we are constantly aware that people will ask, this question is, we are the Poverty Alleviation Fund, but this is like a responsibility not only of one organization, but like you
absolutely.
said, for everyone. Wherever we work, we try to make sure that we can show that we are making progress.
Oh, that's amazing, that's amazing. And you very rightly said, it's not a one-man's job. When we're looking at, managing to bring people out of poverty, especially in a country like Pakistan, we really have to rely on the government, of course, for policy making and whatnot, but a lot of organizations have to come together.
Yeah.
I was in conversation with MD Baitul Mal and some people from PPAF themselves, and they mentioned that this time the government has adopted a new sort of way to figure this out. And this is not that only the government is working on it, but the other organizations as well, like PPAF being one of them. So the work has been divided among all of them, and all of them have the same objective to,
Exactly.
come out with a healthier and, let's say, wealthier
Yeah,
Pakistan.
and very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, so I think the previous week we did a show where I actually talked about Punjab government not providing the poor with the medicine for cancer, which was actually earlier provided by the previous
been
government as well.
regulated.
But now it's on, and they're providing the cancer medication for free. So
That's
I just wanted to correct myself, because the last time when I said it, it was only 2 or 3 days that it was already on. So I actually wanted to let everybody know as well. But yeah, very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, we actually have a report on today's topic as well. Please go ahead. When you guys will come back, we're actually going to ask some more questions. And we really want to talk about the status of women as well.
Right.
Let's do it.
Poverty has many faces, whether it be striving children in Africa or Asia, or whether it be a struggling single mother crying in the supermarket as her children looked confused. The example of poverty ranged from extreme to almost imperceptible, and the UN has declared fighting poverty to be one of the cores of their Millennium Development Goals. There is no denying that poverty is a social struggle and affects communities far and wide, with impacts on single people and the whole cities. With raising awareness in recent decades, there are now more steps than ever being taken towards the eradication of poverty and the assistance and inclusion of those struggling with poverty towards being a part of the solution. The complexity of poverty is now better understood due to increased cultured awareness and sympathy, with true connection and motivation towards a solution. The International Day for the Eradication of Poverty is observed to promote and acknowledge the effort and struggle of those living in poverty. The International Day for the Eradication of Poverty also gives people living in poverty a significant opportunity to make their concerns and thoughts heard, recognizing that they are the first to fight against poverty.
So yeah, that was a little report, and our very own producer did the voiceover. You did a great job, Vikas. And yeah, moving on and talking about the status of women, I think that a lot of initiatives needs to be taken. So ma'am, as we have mentioned earlier, that a lot of agencies and organizations and the government needs to play a pivotal role to do all of so. But then at the same time, I think that awareness is required at the grassroots level. And, I think that one of your initiatives was to reach out to the grassroots level.
Right.
Do you think that all of these initiatives are well accepted at that level?
Actually, I think when we're talking about women and how important it is for them to have a status in society, to be able to take, take advantage of the opportunities. They don't get opportunities, and they don't, neither are they given those opportunities.
Right.
I think we should talk about the Benazir Income Support Program
yes,
in
of
that
course.
context, because that program reaches out to the poorest households, but the money is transferred to the woman in the household.
Oh.
Okay.
And that makes it totally, changes her status,
right.
within the household.
Yeah.
Gives her all of a sudden, a sense of dignity, a respect, and everybody knows that the money is coming through her. So that has been quite a game changer in Pakistan.
Okay.
Over 5.2 million households are benefiting from it. So you can see the poorest woman, first of all, she gets an ID card,
Right.
which opens many other opportunities to us, especially of being able to vote. especially if you're talking about women's, her voice reaching out anywhere.
Right.
Secondly, she has control over that money.
Okay.
And the third parties studies have shown that those women feel that their status has changed.
Okay.
So that's a flagship program of the government, and it depends on the scorecard, poverty scorecard,
Right.
which determines who is the poorest and who is, and then it has been the recognition of multidimensionality is the introduction of the health card now.
All right.
All right.
And-
Okay, well, ma'am, I'm very sorry that I'm interjecting over here, but I have a question for you. I do not really know how the Benazir income support program works, but what I know for sure is that after every 2 months, they actually get money around somewhat around 5,000 or 7,000 rupees, which is 3,500 rupees a month. Now, what I believe in, and this is how we've been brought up, that if you really need sustainable development, you cannot be just giving them money after every 2 months when they're actually not doing anything. And obviously, the government, even the newer government, when they took off, they had their reservations related to the Benazir income support program as well, which is still on going on. That's great. But don't you think that we would rather it will be better for them if we teach them how to fish rather than giving them fish?
No, I think you've got the point. The point is that even the Benazir income support program is now looking at graduating out of that. There are households where you need to give, some cash is necessary.
Essential.
Right.
And you can see that these are households with income levels of 6,000 rupees or 8,000 rupees a month. And if they get even 3,000, it's 50% of what they have.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's a large amount for them. But there are other components of the program. And that's where they also link up with the PPAF and other interventions, because if you're talking about multidimensionality, then we have to link all the other programs that are going on at the ground level. And for women, besides the health card, there are also programs to give them the skills to graduate through either entrepreneurship or skill development or a collective activity. So the direction is that.
All right.
And it's not, and the hope is that as people graduate out of poverty, maybe there are others who are coming in, so that the benefit does not get consolidated or concentrated on one sector of society. So these days, there's the other, the new scorecard that survey is being rolled out, is actually happening as we talk now.
Well, that's
All right.
So those are the kind of things, but we were talking about opportunities when we were talking. It's what are the kind of opportunities that women have, and how do we facilitate their taking on those opportunities?
Yeah.
And those facilitation comes in the way of, as we talked about services, we have one of the best public health, especially preventive health care, primary health care network in anywhere in the developing world. We have to now focus on how do we get people to stay there, how do we get personnel there, how do we keep it running around the clock for people to use it. So those are the things that we need to, because we can't just give, as you say, give out
Right.
money. Handouts are not
Right.
enough.
Yeah.
They have to be supported by other things.
I'll
Right,
be
it's
so
about
happy if somebody is giving me money every month, not
I
doing
wouldn't mind.
anything.
No,
You
but
know,
honestly
fun.
speaking, ma'am, I
No,
guess
no, they have a lot to suffer.
Obviously,
They suffer a lot, and that money means a lot.
Yeah, obviously.
most definitely. And ma'am, I think I sort of understand what you mean. It's all about sustainability. It's not a one-time thing that you might give them, cash to live by, and then they'll be okay with it. But moving on to IFAT has a lot of socioeconomic projects, development projects going on in Pakistan. Can we talk about some of the outcomes in terms of especially, sustainable projects that you guys have been doing?
Yes. Yeah, first of all, we have 5, I would say, indicator when we are designing and supervising a project. One is the relevance, that's, fit with the need of a beneficiary, efficiency, effectiveness, targeting, and sustainability.
All right.
Sustainability is the most important for us, with the impact, of course, because we want to see the exit strategy and to be sure that we are not, financing something that will stop after the project, but that will continue after the project. I think we are partnering with PPF, and I think 10 years ago we have financed a pilot who allowed to develop the first, poverty graduation model in Pakistan, based on the model of BRAC at that time. And today it has been successfully implemented by PPF and its partner, and we are upscaling through the National Poverty Graduation Program, which is a $150 million program, focusing on all the poorest districts in Pakistan. By doing that, as we said, we are using the poverty scorecard. We target these people. We empower the community. And I think one of the outcomes is that these people, they get, they are becoming bankable. This is one thing. So it is a process, a package, which is composed by what the government is doing, this unconditional cash transfer for the ultra poor, BISP, is integrated in that, plus some productive asset transfer. So based on the need of the people, they can have, or goats, animals, or some little capitals to set up a new business. It can be a shop, it can be some handicraft activity.
Anything
it can
to generate income.
Yes, income generating. On the top of this productive assets, you have the trainings, and the people are trained to be able to manage their business.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they have access as well to the interest-free loan from the government. So it's a progressive approach, it's a long-term approach, and after 3-4 years, people are gradually, moving up to the category, up to this category 30, 40, where they become bankable by the microfinance institution.
All right.
So I think this is one
It's
of
a
the process.
It's a great
that
process,
we are
and thank you very
working
much
in.
for talking about training as well. So, sir, I'm very sorry, but I've got another hard question.
No,
for you.
no,
I'm very
I'm
sorry.
happy to.
But it is about training, and it is about training the people at the grassroots level.
Sure.
Now, so yesterday while I was preparing for the show, I came across somebody who was actually a garbage man, won a lottery for £15 million, 7 years, lived a lavish life, and then after 7 years he was a garbage man again. Now, this is what I want to talk about, that when we give trainings to people who are actually not mentally ready to accept or to know or to recognize an opportunity, don't you think that it's a waste of opportunity onto those people who are not ready for that?
Okay. So I think
everyone has something to say about this.
Yeah, so it's a question for everybody.
Yeah, it has to be. I think one of the fundamentals, principles when you are doing development is to have the other person that you're engaging with stake in the process, right? So whenever we do infrastructure schemes, or we expect that the community will also contribute to it. So they contribute at least, even in the poorest, and some people may say, the poorest, why are you asking them to contribute? But there is a reason for it, so that they have a buy-in, they have a stake in this process.
Okay.
So when somebody has a stake in the process, what will happen? Number one, that the outcome will be more sustainable. They will ensure that it is,
the process is smooth,
right? All of that. And the same principle applies for training as well, that people have to. So I don't believe in, giving people stipends to go and attend trainings, because then you may end up with that situation. People should actually, we can facilitate it, but at the end of the day, there has to be a buy-in from that person, that kind of, the passion to do something. Right.
And a commitment.
And a commitment. So you're absolutely right that, the person may end up being the guy. I think I've seen that film as well.
Yeah, but that's great. What do you have to say about it now?
Well, I think that, giving training, first of all, I agree with the Qazi Ahmed Isa, yes. I agree with him that you have to listen to the ones who want change in their life. And what is it that they want? And actually, when you come to women, very often women don't know what are the opportunities around. You have to actually inform them that these are the options. And then also we need to know where those opportunities are and how do we link them. That is as important as just giving them a skill. A skill has to be to their benefit in terms of employability and how they get access that employability. So it's a whole package. You can't just think of, you're not in a shop giving out training certificates. You have to have that certificate, has to have a meaning for that woman.
And just to add, and I think build on what Uba had said, that development, being in this business for a long time, It's about mentoring, it's about nurturing, it's about building capacity. And I'm a great believer that, you have to do this incrementally. If you were to, I remember, giving the first loan for 4,000 rupees to a woman in Quetta Kachi Abadi.
Right.
And 4,000 rupees, you'd think it'll be ridiculous. Now the same woman is now taking 50,000 rupees. So, if you had given her 50,000 up front, the capacity to actually handle that money, she would have been in debt, she would have other problems. So we have to be very conscious of how we approach this, build people's capacity, look at the context, provide the opportunity, and those are the kind of things. So it's a long-term process.
It's a procedure,
Exactly.
right?
Yes,
And it's
process.
great as well. And this year's theme, ladies and gentlemen, since we're left with only 3 or 4 minutes, so I want to move on to Mr. Hubert as well. So the theme is to empower children, their families, and then the communities as well to end poverty. Now, when we speak about empowering children, obviously one of the characteristics of empowering them is education, so that they can go and talk with their family. But don't you think that if we empower them with opportunities for business, it will actually come under child labor? Because they'll have to work.
You want me to answer? I can
Yes, so
answer.
You may start and then ma'am.
No,
may-
Yeah.
first,
Whoever
and then
wants
after.
to-
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you go on, ma'am.
No, I was just saying that, children, you want to build their capacities. You don't want to go into labor, but their capacities of education is not only to work, but also to be able to think.
And convince their families.
Convince their families, but to be think and to be able to grow mentally, to be able to enter this world.
Exactly.
We have 22.5 million children out of school.
Right,
Exactly.
we
Half
do.
of them are girls.
Yeah.
I think we need to, even for skills, you need that basic education.
Exactly.
And that is very important.
Exactly.
And keeps them out of trouble also.
That's good. Mr. Hubert, your turn.
No, I think maybe two things. One, when we approach a family and a poor family, we look at the family. And I think, in the family, we can, if we increase the condition of the family, the first objective is to bring children to school, to have better health. I haven't seen in my visit in the field somebody who say we are going to have better incomes and then it will be for me. It will be for the family. And secondly, we have special program, for the youth, because the youth are the future.
Yep.
And of course, we need to strengthen their capacity, give them the power, to be represented in the society.
And do what they want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think that's great. But thank you very much for being with us. It was lovely to have you.
Yes.
It was lovely to be in conversation, and no hard feelings. Okay, we are all friends.
We're all here to inform and educate the audience out there. But ladies and gentlemen, of course, when we're talking about poverty and poverty status in Pakistan, it's such a long thing to talk about. I mean, it needs a lot of time. So I feel like, Shazad, we should extend the show for tomorrow as well.
Exactly.
And one
You
very
should, because I won't be here tomorrow.
Unfortunately. But a very important thing all of you spoke about was the scorecard for poverty. Since we're short on time, that is what we will also discuss tomorrow. But I feel like we lacked representation of government in this show. So maybe tomorrow we'll have someone from the Baitul Mal.
Well, that's great. And adding on to that, ladies and gentlemen,
perfect.
what
Yeah,
I've
business.
realized is that I think that the private and public sector both really need to shake hands and be together on this as well.
Of course.
And I'm very glad, I'm very happy that that the new government and under the leadership of Prime Minister Imran Khan, we have these initiatives of having residency for people who are actually out on the streets too as well. So we have initiated the process to move
Right.
towards a welfare state. It's going to take a longer period, but I think that if public and private partnership is going to work, the period is going to be shortened and we'll be a happy country and all of the people around us will be our family.
Of course,
and they are.
inshallah, of
So please
course.
make sure that you write to us on our Facebook page, which is with the name of
Well This Morning.
on Twitter,
Well This Morning without a
on
G.
Daily Motion in GT.
Also Well This Morning.
And the fabulous repeat is going to be at
5 past 11 p.m. tonight.
So the next time, 1, 2, 3.
Good
Good
morning.
morning. Thank you very much.